Hey, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. We're glad you're tuning into this episode. We are a viewer and listener supported podcast, so we really appreciate you listening, watching on YouTube. We really encourage you to subscribe to whatever platform you're using. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or if you're on Apple or however you listen to a podcast, be sure and subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Also, make comments if you like it and share it if you like it. We really need people to make comments and share the episodes that you like. And then also, if you're not already a supporter, we really would encourage you to go to spiritualityadventures.com and you can pick a tier, and we have bonus content for every type of giver. This is a nonprofit, so they're tax-deductible donations, but we do provide bonus content for those who are supporters. So be a part of the team, help support Spirituality Adventures, and we're so glad you're tuning in. All right, welcome everybody to Spirituality Adventures. Glad you're tuning in to this episode. I am so honored to have Don Stephens with us today. Don is the founder of Mercy Ships. These are ships that are floating hospitals that go to the poorest of the poor in the world and do all kinds of free surgeries, free medical care, free dental for the poorest of the poor, after the model of Jesus's healing ministry. Is that right, Don?
You've got it. Our mission, vision, and value state that we use hospital ships to bring hope and healing to Africa's poorest. And next line is we follow the 2,000-year-old model of Jesus. And that's really important. That's the very heart of who we are, following the model of Jesus. And then we have 4 core values. You'll recognize these immediately. They come from the Gospels and Jesus' words exactly. Number 1, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Number 2, love and serve others. Number 3, be a people of excellence. Number 4, be a people of integrity, because at the end of our lives, if we don't have integrity, we don't have anything. So very simple, 4 core values, and we now have people coming from over 50 nations. We can accommodate approximately 450 people plus on our new ship, and those are mainly healthcare professionals, engineers, people working in the hotel side, navigation, the maintenance, the safety, the captain, all of that. But one other aspect, we hire approximately, again, these are ballpark numbers, 400 local people in each port where we are. So you can imagine 400 local Africans coming on board every day. They eat 1 meal with us. Well, most of Africa, if they get 1 meal a day, that's good. That's a balanced diet. That's wonderful. But if I could take you to the dining room on the Global Mercy and follow some of these African, we call them day crew, with us, the rice it's a plate full. And everything else they can put on it is just so humorous to see what they choose for their 1 meal a day. And they work with us. If they're in the medical department, or let's say they're an anesthesia provider, or they want to learn to be an anesthesia provider or a surgeon or an operating room nurse, they go right with us. So it's cerebral, very intense training, but it's on the job training. You learn by observing and answering questions with the surgeons, the doctors, the anesthesia providers. And then eventually they will say, well, now it's your turn. You do it while we observe it. And then you have to train somebody else what you've learned. So there's a multiplication factor that happens. The 400, I think, this is my personal opinion, others may disagree. I think our greatest impact are on those 400 and some who we work with day in and day out, because they get to see us from 35, 40 nations following the model of Jesus. That's how we leave a lasting footprint, in my opinion.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful. So let's get just a little quick backstory. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And what was your faith tradition when you were growing up?
All right, my father was in the military. He taught meat and dairy hygiene at the end of World War II, and he was stationed at the hospital, the military hospital, General Beaumont Hospital in El Paso, Texas. And when the war was over, with me as a little baby, they came back to Western Colorado, where my family has been. My great-grandfather came in here in the early 1900s. So Western Colorado, which until, the interstate and everything else, this was the most remote part of the U.S., continental U.S., because Colorado is a centennial state. We're 100 years after 76 is when Colorado became a state. You know this, you're Colorado aficionado. And you couldn't get into Western Colorado unless you went over the passes. So that, and gold and silver mining and Telluride, Ouray, all of this area, the gold mines, that's what opened it up to the influx of European prospectors and farmers and ranchers, primarily. So those are my roots. Where did I go to church? My dad was a Baptist. I think it was a GARB Baptist. That's important because there are many different Baptists. You would know this. GARB, I've been told, stands for General Association of Regular Baptists.
Regular Baptists.
As otherwise known as Hard Shell Baptists. And my mother, because she was Norwegian.
Harder shell than Southern Baptists, right?
Well, Southern Baptists are I think the Southern Baptists would agree that GARB Baptists are hard shell Baptists. Southern Baptists are a little more open to everything except women in leadership, I understand, because Rick Warren just got kicked out.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately, in my opinion. But anyway, I grew up Southern Baptist, so yeah.
You grew up Southern Baptist?
Yeah. I went to Baylor, Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, got a little too charismatic for the Southern Baptist, wound up in the Vineyard. And then now I'm with Disciples of Christ. So I've had a journey, man.
You've kind of bounced around there. I have a good friend that we share a mutual friend, Dan Cox, who became a Vineyard pastor in Grand Junction. And he started a church from scratch, actually, in the home of my brother-in-law. And then it grew and rented facilities, and eventually, I don't know the numbers, but 3,000-4,000 would attend on the weekend. And Dan's a wonderful Bible teacher. I've never heard him speak that I didn't hear from God.
That's awesome. Yeah, Dan, I just had dinner with Dan, when I was out there just a couple of weeks ago. And and by the way, tomorrow we'll release an interview I did with Dan Cox on near-death experiences, which is really, that comes out tomorrow. And by the way, anybody that's listening that follows me on social media or Facebook, I posted maybe 2 weeks ago a video from up on top of Cimarron Pass, near Cimarron Pass, there, near where you're sitting right now.
Owl Creek Pass?
Yeah, Owl Creek Pass, that's it.
Oh, that's just up the road from us.
I rode my bike up there.
As an electric assisted?
No.
No?
I pedaled that sucker.
Well, you must be very fit. Like I said earlier, I'm 78. I'm at the stage in life, if I can do 1,500 meters on my rowing machine, I feel really good. If I get up to 2,500, boy, that'll serve me for another day.
That's interesting, Don. One of the things I read about you said that you had spent time in East Texas, like in Tyler and Lindell, Texas. Is that true? Or because you're all in Colorado now, right?
Well, the home office is in East Texas in the greater Tyler area. It's actually in Garden Valley.
Okay.
It's a center that was built by another very effective movement, I guess we could say, spun out of the Jesus movement, the Jesus people, Agape Force. And Agape Force sold records, Sylvania, Bullfrogs and Butterflies. They sold them door to door, and with the proceeds, paid cash for this facility. Then they changed direction. They were no longer doing that, and the property went into receivership. Then it was bought by an insurance healthcare company. They lost it, and we bought it out of bankruptcy for, I love to say this because God's economy is amazing, 10 cents on the dollar.
Wow.
So we have 400, maybe it's 500 acres there. We don't need all that acreage, but it's important to keep it just to protect it. So that's where we do all of our orientation, entry-level training, onboarding. So if you're going to be a part of Mercy Ships, you have to come through the center, or we also repeat this in Europe. The onboarding and the biggest part of Mercy Ships, and this is where my hat is off to those who do it, is the administrative. We will have up to 3,000 volunteers, meaning a few weeks to a few months to 2 years, 3,000 coming from, as I mentioned, 40 to 50 nations. All of that administrative logistical is done in Texas.
Okay.
Secondly, we are a shipping company, and we are audited. I think that's the best word. Surveyed is what you would say in the maritime world, annually by Lloyd's. So they come to really check us out. Do you know what you're doing? Are you doing it rightly according to the latest policies and procedures? So that whole marine operations side is also headquartered in East Texas. And they're the ones that I think are they're called of God to be geniuses when it comes to organizational structure and doing things right and doing it well, so that when others see Christians doing it with the highest quality, it speaks to them of the God we serve.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. I remember I can't remember if I was at Baylor or Southwestern right in the 80s. There was a youth pastor at a church called Green Acres Baptist Church in Tyler, Texas. And they had a youth pastor named Eddie Cantu. And I did a Disciple Now conference with Eddie in the 80s at Green Acres. And then that was not far from there was the Last Days Ministry, Keith Green, and that whole ministry was kind of located around there. I just remember all of that from the 80s,
Keith and Melody were personal friends. Keith, I met with him in East Texas, and we talked about him getting some international exposure. So I organized for him to go to Europe. He went to several European countries and then came to be with us in Greece. So we were in Greece on the seashore, not too far from where our ship, the first ship, was, when Keith began to talk about his dream of recruiting, was it 100,000 or 1 million? That was a big number of missionaries of this generation to go. And he flew back to Texas after that time. And I was actually, along with a friend of mine, the last two to fly in the plane before Keith and his two kids and the pilot and others went down over East Texas. So that's just down the road from us. And it's been redeemed. The property it now belongs to a Korean Christian organization that are training Korean Americans, second and third generation Koreans, for missions. And so it's amazing what they've done there in the property. Dion, we hadn't gone through the Panama Canal yet, bringing our first ship across. Keith paid for the Panama Canal crossing. Dion got on an airplane in Kingston, Jamaica. We'd stopped there when we got the news, and she flew to be with Melody because we felt like we need to be close to her during that very unbelievably painful time of loss.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So when you started Mercy Ships, you were in partnership with YWAM, is that right?
We were.
Ships in 1978, is that right?
Yes. Yes.
And was it partnered with YWAM at that time?
Well, if you understand partnership, every YWAM entity, to quote Lauren Cunningham, the founder of YWAM, every ship floats on its own bottom, meaning each YWAM entity is independently autonomous, responsible for everything, their finances, their vision, their purpose, their program. Now, the one thing in common is the discipleship training school. What happened for me, and I was a YWAMer, I was with YWAM. I was the director I had a big title, no job description. I was director for Europe, Middle East, and Africa. I just think of that.
Yeah, that's a lot of territory.
Well, it's a lot of territory, but I wasn't sure what I was to do next. Okay. Anyway, I was invited to go to Calcutta, India, to visit Dr. Mark and Hulda Buntain and speak to their youth group. And while I was there, I mentioned, Calcutta. I don't know if I actually mentioned it or somebody else did, but the subject came up of Mother Teresa. And one of the associates with the Buntains came to me and said, Don, I've got your meeting arranged with Mother Teresa tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock.
Wow. Wow. What year was that?
77, September 77.
Okay.
Or maybe 78. I'd have to check one of those two. 77, yeah. I think it was. So I don't know about you, but all of a sudden I was petrified. What are you going to say to Mother Teresa?
Right. Oh my.
So I didn't have a very good night. I was writing out answers on a 3x5 card and put in my jacket. Tore them up. Next morning, 7 o'clock. It's a very small room. There are 4 cane-back chairs. Very simple, very plain. I could reach out and touch Mother Teresa. To my left over here, there's another sister with her. A friend was beside me, and the 4 of us. And I got my list out, and I said, Mother Teresa, the first question I want to ask you is, how did you begin? And in my memory, now the memory can create things, but this is how I remember it. She reached out and pushed my hands away and said, I won't answer a single question about me. We have prayed for this meeting, and I want to ask you questions.
Wow.
Well, if I was frightened before, I'm really frightened now.
That's right.
What is she going to ask? So Mother Teresa said to me, now again, this is so many years ago. We're talking decades. I call them the Mother Teresa questions. That they're the questions that I had as a result of time with Mother Teresa. So the first question was, why were you born?
Wow. Where or why? Why?
Why?
Why were you born? Wow. Interesting.
And I struggled. I didn't know how to answer.
Huh.
It's perhaps the most basic philosophical question for all of us. Why am I here?
Exactly.
What's my purpose? So she helped me. Why do you think God put you on earth? What are you to do? Why were you born? So I struggled through telling her about this dream that I had of a hospital ship serving Africa. Now, She gave me a gift immediately. She didn't laugh at me. That's a gift.
Mm.
Sometimes we laugh at others' dreams and we damage them.
Mm.
She didn't. She said something like, well, that's a big dream or a large dream, and then she made it clear in our theology, in Catholic theology, we believe that God often uses pain to prepare for purpose. Second question, where's your pain?
Where's your pain?
Well, we have C.S. Lewis's Problem of Pain. We have Francis Schaeffer's wife's treatise on pain and suffering. And there are lots of good books on pain. Mm-hmm. But my mind, I was thinking, look, I grew up in Western Colorado. Men don't talk about pain. I didn't know how to answer. Where's your pain? So again, coaching, helping. So I told her about John Paul, one of our 4 children, a daughter and 3 boys. He's the middle boy. He was born in 76. So his 50-some years, he's nonverbal. He doesn't say a word. He doesn't say mama, papa. He's autistic to a degree. We don't know what degree. His signs are, this is how he signs his name. Sorry, he beats his chest. That's John Paul. This is eat. This is drink. And this is on, meaning turn the TV on, get with the program. He's not a purist in how he uses his signs. Dion, my wife, likes to joke and says, when we stand before St. Peter or before the Lord, John Paul is going to say, why did you give me such handicapped parents? They only taught me 4 signs. We learned a lot through John Paul. It's true that the pain that I had as a young father, not knowing what are we going to do, how are we going to care for this, how will it change my call into missions? Should we go home? Should we quit? John Paul helped us understand the heart of God and love and mercy for not only the poor, but the special needs, those with challenges mentally and physically. And he became, the pain associated with John Paul became part of preparing us for the purpose of mercy ships. And then the last question was just as direct. What are you doing about your dream? Why were you born? What's your dream? Where's your pain? What are you doing about it? Well, I hadn't done anything but write it out on a yellow legal pad. So when I flew home to Geneva, we were living in Switzerland, French-speaking Switzerland, Lausanne at the time. And Dion picked me up at the Geneva airport. Driving home, I'm filling Dion in on my time with Mother Teresa. And when I said what I've just explained to you, Dion said, Mother Teresa asked you, what are you doing about it? I said, yeah. She said, well, Don, you better start to look for ships. That's the kind of wife I am.
Wow.
And again, let's look at the sovereignty of God who goes before us, who plans, prepares. We met a couple in Switzerland, Henry and Francoise Andre. The Andre family owned a shipping company. We met them through the Billy Graham Association because Billy Graham had hosted the 1974 Lausanne Congress on World Evangelization.
Yeah.
And a Bible study was started for some of the ladies by Martha Hoke, the wife of Donald Hoke, who organized everything for the Billy Graham Association.
Yeah.
So Martha Hoke says to Dion, I've got this ladies' Bible study started. Dion, I want you to come because I want you to take this over when we return back to the US, when this Congress is over and the follow-up is done. So that's how we met the Andres in a Bible study started by the Hoax, Billy Graham's key leaders putting this together.
And were you at the YWAM base there in Lausanne?
We were not far from that. That's where I went into office. Okay. But we lived in a rented home out in the French would say, the Swiss would say the Gros Vaud, the big Vaud. Now, remember, Switzerland is not a very big country, but it was on the other side of Froideville. Froid is cold. So we were on the other side of Cold Village. And that's where we had a rented home, and that's where our two eldest children started school.
Okay.
So they speak fluent French with a Vaudois, a Swiss accent, sorry. And we have many good friends. Switzerland was the first office. They birthed Mercy Ships. We're thankful to them. Those donors that many of them had never seen a ship, but they believed in our vision of what we were doing and supported us.
That's awesome. Where did you meet Dan Cox? Because I know he was in YWAM. And by the way, Dan and I were colleagues in the vineyard. My church and his church were two of the largest vineyards in America. I was in Kansas City. He was in Grand Junction, and he's been a dear friend. And he's a little older than me, so I always picked his brain, tried to learn from Dan as much as I could. But where did you guys meet? Was that back in that time period?
Dan's parents were friends with my wife's parents. In fact, Dion's father and Dan's father were closest friends. They bought separate airplanes at the same time. They flew, they did business together. They flew to Alaska with their wives in their planes. They just did a lot. So we knew Dan when he was a little boy. I have a younger brother, 4 years younger. See, Dan's a little older than you. I'm a little older than Dan.
Okay.
He was a football star and a wrestler. He was a state champion in heavyweight, 180, I think. Maybe not 180, but he was a state champion wrestler. Dan's an incredible athlete. And he became, in my opinion, a very gifted, simple, powerful pastor preaching just the word, verse after verse, topic after topic. And the men in particular flocked to Dan's vineyard because he could communicate in a language that men appreciated and loved and learned from. And we had been family friends since he was a teenager.
Wow, that's so cool. Well, he loves you and has so much respect for you. So thank you so much for doing this. So Mother Teresa asked you two questions. Why were you born? Where is your pain? What
are you doing about it?
Okay, what are you doing about it? I'm writing these down. I like these questions. What are you doing about it? And that's where you
meaning, what are you doing about your dream?
Yeah. Okay. Those the three?
Those are the three.
Awesome. And then that gave you some sense of like, well, maybe God's in this. You met this guy from Italy who was a ship guy, right?
First of all, we met the Swiss family who had a shipping company, and they introduced us. They helped do the feasibility study, tactical plan, deployment plan. Armed with that, I went to a Swiss bank to borrow the money for the first ship. And I only learned this 20 years later because the Swiss are they don't talk about what they've done. They'd rather store up treasures in heaven than get credit down, which I think is commendable. The Swiss bank loaned us the money. And that's because Mr. Henry, said to the head of the UBS, Union Bank Switzerland, or whichever, maybe it's one of the other three main banks, let's let him try. Speaking of me with the ship. The banks fear the loss of reputation. Well, nobody knew of us. We didn't have a reputation to lose. And they said, Henry said to the bank, if he loses it, because he already had Greek ship owners wanting to buy it, they were willing. I had a telex offer for twice what we paid for it. So Henry said to the banker, yeah, the Anastasis.
Yeah.
If he loses it, you can sell it and make money. So you don't have much risk. Let him try. Now, I'm sure they said it more finely and properly in the business language, but that's how it impacted me.
Wow. That's amazing.
We serve a God who risks. The God of the Bible is a God who risks. He takes risks with every one of us. And I love that about him.
I remember John Wimber used to say, faith is spelled R-I-S-K.
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, that one stuck in my head. Oh gosh. Well, for those who might be listening who aren't even familiar with Mercy ships, this beginning with this first ship ended up launching Mercy ships, which now has give a quick overview of what's happened with Mercy ships since that first ship till now.
Well,
happened?
I'd have to go to our website and look it all up. This is what sticks in my mind. Through God's grace, we perform more than 100,000 surgeries or medical procedures in Africa. There are few in Asia, but mainly in Africa. Because we used to have smaller ships that were serving in the Philippines and other remote areas, but for us, we learned economies of scale. There was the right size to run a hospital ship. And the reason I think that's important is because we need to look at cost per person served. Those little ships, in other words, just looking at it superficially, you can say, well, those little ships, you can get them more out of the way places, more remote areas, and get them further up the rivers. You should use small ships. Well, the interesting thing about it, if you're going to do ships that are certified by Lloyd's or some other international registry, it takes a lot to run a ship. And a little ship, although it looks little, it may be just as expensive as a bigger ship that has a full hospital on it. So we did a lot of corporate intelligence, best practices, comparisons, to lead us to what we could do and what we perhaps could become the best in the world at. Not that we're worried about being the best in the world, but what is your core competency? We stopped doing hospitals ashore. There are many organizations that do that and do it well. That wasn't our core competency. So we stopped doing all those things. Well, I think one of the most important things for us, at least, and for organizations today, is to learn what you should stop doing so you can focus on what you should be doing. And for us, it's running hospital ships serving Africa, and we've added the training component.
What are some of your, because you mentioned in our, for those of you who are listening, we do a bonus content for our people that support the podcast, and I encourage you, if you haven't already supported Spirituality Adventures, go over to spiritualityadventures.com and jump on there. But you had mentioned that you're recently reading a book by the founder of Hobby Lobby, and you found some interesting intersections between some of your contrarian leadership philosophy and his. What are some of your most interesting contrarian leadership insights from all the years of leading Mercy ships?
Well, I was looking. I turned around to try to find the book. It's downstairs by my favorite chair. That's where I'm still reading it. I've read it twice, and I like to pause and wonder. This is by Mr. Green. Is it David Green or is that the son? Anyway, the Green family that own Hobby Lobby.
Mm-hmm.
And when he says leadership not by the book, meaning God didn't lead them like you would learn at a McKinsey seminar or Harvard Business School. They did the next thing God told them to do, which was started making picture frames in their garage. Next thing you know, they believe God led them, and I believe he did. And look at the size of the company and the reputation it has today, both employees and customers. He led them to China, and they started buying lots of supplies and materials and things to sell in China, where you could buy it for a relatively good price with good quality. They are strong on quality control, and then sell it in the US for a very marketable, competitive price. Not exactly what you would learn at Harvard. And so, and not that I have no, one of our chief medical officers has a PhD from Harvard, so I'm not anti-Harvard.
Right.
I'm just saying we followed what the next step God told us to do, which was to buy a ship. And again, I mentioned already the God who risks. He delights to take risks with his children. Who knows what God can do through you if you're willing to obey the next thing he tells you to do? There's risk. But there's risk in everything we do in life.
I am on that journey, still taking risks. That's good stuff. So, what's your when did you what year did you led this thing from 1978? You're still connected with it, but you stepped down from the frontline leadership, just a few years ago?
No, and again, these are some of my mistakes, okay? For me personally, and I think for many founders, one of the biggest life mistakes is in the transfer from one generation of leadership to the next. Succession planning.
Right.
You know, a lot of books written around, a lot of experts on succession planning, but not too many entrepreneurs or founding pastors have really done it according to what others, the experts, think. So my big mistakes, there are 4 of them. I'll just mention 3 quickly. We're in selecting the person to take over after me. So you get everything ready, you're preparing, you're mentoring, you're giving more and more responsibility, you're stepping out, you make sure that that your staff can't do an end run and find you in the hallway and get permission to do what they wanted to do when their direct report has already said, no, we're not going to do that. I failed the first time. So I was really, when I say I failed, it was a mess, a disaster. So you have to go through the process again. And I failed the second time. Both were people that I had interviewed, did thorough processing, background checks, checking with others, recommendations, referrals. And I didn't work for us to try to parachute someone else from the outside. I did that twice, it didn't work. So the third time I thought, well, we'll do it from within. So a young man, very bright, with a heart for missions, is smarter than I am, a very bright guy, We put him in place, and I was stepping out, and that's when the weaknesses, we all have them. You know, I could write a book about my weaknesses and my mistakes. In fact, some people said I should do it. They would buy it just to read about all the mistakes I've made. He couldn't make decisions. So how did I miss that? Because if you can't make decisions, then everybody that's following you there's a frustration, a backlog. We need to get a decision, even if it's wrong, you can go on. My view is that if the decision's wrong, we hope it isn't, but if it is wrong, admit it and take steps immediately to correct it and get on the right pathway. But don't be paralyzed with fear of making decisions. So I started stepping over three CEOs before. So that's 15 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
And I'm very comfortable now having no say-so in operations. I have a lot of people still come to me, and then my answer is, well, you know, I'm no longer in operations. I don't have to deal with that. And yet I've been asked by the CEO and the chairman, which was a change for probably 5 years at least. Nobody wanted to hear anything from me. My voice was,
sure,
you left, you're out of here, goodbye. But the current chairman of the board and the CEO welcome my voice. We meet regularly, once every 2 weeks, the three of us together, often with a Zoom call or something like that. And we talk about anything and everything so that we're each other's strong supporters. And to be in a place where you have a voice, no longer the voice, rightly so, I think is a very healthy place to be. And I'm very comfortable. In fact, the organization is much better operationally managed than when I was involved. And anyone that works there can tell you that.
Well, boy, I'm writing a memoir right now, and it's full of some of my mistakes for sure. Mine are. I had a meltdown personally, so I didn't end up. I had written a succession plan, but didn't end up being the person who oversaw that. So anyway, with the church that I founded, I was knocking on doors in the 1990s, starting a church in Kansas City. And then, started with 2 or 3 people, and it grew to several thousand. But yeah, but I'm still kicking. So I'm still alive and breathing. And so I'm writing down these questions because I'm revisiting. Well, what is still my purpose? I'm still breathing. Why was I born? And my pain, man, I've had a lot of that. And then what to do about it, and then trying to learn from my mistakes and learn and move forward. So, man, that's just a part of life, isn't it?
It is.
We journey down these different things.
Mistakes and errors are actually good teachers.
Yeah, if we survive them, that's what I say. if we live through them, then we can. All right, God, what's up? What do I need to learn through this? Good stuff. Well, Don, we are out of time. I could talk on for hours with you, but you were gracious to go past your deadline with me.
Well, thank you very much for the call. And as you mentioned, we have a lot in common. Dan is a very close friend of both of us. And I've learned a lot from Dan.
Thank you so much for taking time to join us on Spirituality Adventures. Thanks for all the work and ministry that you've done through the years. I'm super fond of Africa. I've been going to Ethiopia for over 2 decades, working with churches that we helped start and orphanages that we helped start, and still have a real fondness for that country. And that's the main country that I've worked in, but have always been aware of mercy ships ever since I came to Christ. I came to Christ in 1977 as a teenager coming out of the recreational drug world, and came to Christ at a Southern Baptist youth camp, and I've been following Jesus ever since. And I was always aware of, I never was a YWAMer, but I was always aware and always crossed paths. In fact, I met Lauren Cunningham years ago, and then met, oh gosh, what's the guy that took over after Lauren?
The big tall guy.
What?
The big tall guy.
Tell me with his name.
Floyd McClung.
Yeah, Floyd. And I had dinner with Floyd one night back, oh gosh, it's been a couple of decades ago. But yeah, we could go on and on and on about common connections.
Well, just one other thing you mentioned, Green Acres is our home church in Tyler, Texas.
Oh, is that right?
Pastor David Dykes was our pastor until he instituted a very wonderful succession plan. And our new pastor is just doing very well. It's just encouraging to see.
Well, that's good. It's always good when it goes well, right? Thankful for that. But yes, thanks for being here. Thanks for all the work that you've done in the world for Jesus and for the good of the poor and those who are disabled and those who are struggling just to have basic health. It's a wonderful, beautiful expression of the life of Jesus. Thank you for doing all you've done through the years.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to Spirituality Adventures, and we will see you next time.
Hey, you made it to the end. Thanks for listening all the way through on this episode. By the way, if you're not already a supporter, go to spiritualityadventures.com, sign up for one of our monthly supports, and you will receive our bonus content. You'll receive lots of interesting information about our guests. Many of our musicians will do special bonus songs and record a song. So I want to encourage you to do that. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Be sure and subscribe. Be sure and share any of the episodes that you like. And be sure and make comments if you like them as well. This helps us get Spirituality Adventures out there to more listeners, more watchers. So whatever platform you're using, subscribe, like, share, make comments, and go to our website, sign up for our team, and be a part of the team support. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.